Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me. I've been given this and I thought it was worthwhile putting this out to many people to make of this what you will. Those of you in the what we would call perhaps the lawful way of living as opposed to the legal way of living would say that acts and statutes of course don't concern a living man. However, we are in a world in which both of these seem to be affecting us, and this is an interesting little loophole that motorists might find useful. And a big thanks to Carlo who sent this to me. I'll leave a link in the description. It may be a tiny URL link because YouTube, not only having banned me several times and now defunded me, they also seem to be stopping me having clickable links in the description, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, let's read this report and see what this loophole is all about. Magistrates' Court could grind to a halt, it says, if thousands of motorists exploit a legal loophole unwittingly exposed by a Welsh driver. Magistrates had no choice but to find Philip Dennis of Whitford, Flintshire, not guilty of speeding when his case was heard on Thursday. He omitted to sign the standard form which is sent to the owner of each vehicle caught by a speed camera, and Mould magistrates said they couldn't accept the form as evidence. Police have no power to compel car owners to sign the form and have been expecting someone to spot the loophole. Yesterday, the Association of British Drivers, representing about 2,500 motorists, predicted that drivers would soon get wind of the case. Of course they would. Motorists, says the organisation, are always very quick to seek any way of avoiding paying for their speeding ticket, particularly when they've been caught by cameras, because they resent very much the way the cameras operate, said spokesman Tony Vickers. The cameras have very much reduced public respect for the police and the local authorities. And I think many of us would agree that it is some form of entrapment. Anyway, people are only too glad, he goes on, to find a way to beat the system. He said motorists who receive a speeding ticket after being caught on camera could opt to have their case heard in court rather than pay the fine without a quibble. If a lot of people take up this option, he goes on, it will have another side effect, which will be to clog up the magistrates' courts with hundreds or thousands of motorists all trying to avoid paying the fine. The implication for the legal system is interesting, to say the least. And although the ABD, which, as I go back here, just to remind you, the organisation, the Association of British Drivers, although the ABD did not condone breaking the highway laws, it said it would place the details of the loophole on its own website for other drivers to read. I'm sure a lot of people will try it on to see whether it gets them anywhere. The prospect of using the loophole could look especially appealing to people who already have endorsements on their licence, said Mr. Vickers. They should bear in mind that if they fail, they will end up paying the full fine rather than the 50% they would pay if they put their hand up. When a police camera takes a photograph of a speeding vehicle, the vehicle's registered owner is sent a form asking who the driver was at the time. It's an offence not to complete the form and name the driver, but the owner does not have to sign it. If the form has not been signed, the courts cannot take any notice of it. Magistrates in Mould were asked to prove the case of speeding against Philip Dennis from Whitford near Holyhead, but the clerk pointed out that the form naming the defendant as the driver was unsigned. The driver had provided the information required of him, but there was no requirement under that section of the law for the form to be signed. Magistrates said they were not happy, but had to find the defendant not guilty in his absence. Road Peace, the charity for road accident victims, said the loophole showed that cameras and computers were no substitute for a police presence on the road. So I find that very interesting. Now, having spoken to many of the lawful people on this show, they've said we should never fill in the forms that come when you get these sort of misdemeanors. You should never fill in the form, because by doing so, you're giving away your jurisdiction. And presumably that's where the signature is. You fill in the form and you sign it, and it's binded you to that declaration, and you've then given jurisdiction. But of course, by not signing it, it means anybody could have filled it in. Somebody who didn't like you, could have been a complete stranger. And so therefore that evidence is no longer evidence, or it was never evidence, because there's no signature, a living man attached to it. So this is interesting in and of itself. But because I've been told that actually we shouldn't be filling in these forms because you don't give jurisdiction, I'm curious now if you write a letter, or more importantly a notice, and you sign it, whether I guess it depends on the contents of that notice and letter, because you may be saying, I don't give you any jurisdiction in this, I'm just trying to help you with your questions, but I am not admitting to anything. So I guess you could put it like that. But that's fascinating. So I just thought, for the sake of clarity, as it is now in the public domain, I would pass that on, because people may find it useful. Obviously, this is not legal advice. You are advised to make your own decision on all things, because you are sovereign people, men and women out there. You make your own decisions, and you're not influenced by anything that I or anybody else will say. You have to do your own due diligence. But it is fascinating when you find these kind of loopholes. And it also makes you curious about what happens if you have other forms that you fill in and do not sign. Be interesting to see your thoughts and observations as ever. Thank you for watching.